Hey everybody, Pete Meyer, Motor Age Magazine here. I want to ask you a question. How many of you struggle with electrical troubleshooting? From my travels around the country, that seems to be one of the biggest challenges that techs face. And I'll admit, I was right there with you for quite a while until I learned a few things that made life a lot easier. Now, of course, you've heard me teach about different testing techniques, reinforcing your fundamentals. All of these are very, very important, but so are the tools that you use to troubleshoot before you troubleshoot. Now, Pete, you may be asking, what do you mean by that? Well, especially when it comes to electrical troubleshooting, you can take some time with the wiring diagrams and look at the symptoms that you're dealing with and get some pretty good ideas of where the fault lies before you even start opening up connectors or probing harnesses. So I'm going to encourage you to do that homework first. Now, it helps when you've got some additional help. And my friends at Mitchell One, specifically ProDemand, have developed some very useful tools when it comes to their wiring diagrams to help you do just that, to troubleshoot before you troubleshoot, to make that process easier. And here to share that information today with me is Mitchell One's Director of Product Development, Ben Johnson. He's been with me a few times, a very knowledgeable guy. Ben, welcome. I appreciate you taking the time way out there in California to join me and share everything that ProDemand is doing to make life easier for that technician in the shop.
Well, thanks, Pete. It's great to be here and nice to be talking to you again. Yeah, it's interesting. I love the subject of, electrical diagnosis. You've been in it a while. I was in it for a long time. And, as we reminisce back in those days when, computer-controlled carburation was the thing and then fuel injection, we thought that those diagrams were pretty complex. And now we look back on them and it's probably like the early forefathers thought a Model T was. It seems like every time you think something's complex, next year it's very simple and the new thing's more complex. But as we look at everything that's happening on the vehicle, whether it's new drivability, emission standards components, or whether it's ADAS and up to partially self-driving and self-driving vehicles, everything's going to have electronics associated with it. And I think anybody that believes they're going to not be an electrical diagnostician and stay in the game is probably fooling themselves. So at Mitchell, we've always been kind of known for our wiring diagrams, and it's more than wiring diagrams. We view it as you've said, it's really about the philosophy of how you attack an electrical problem. And we agree with your assessment that, before you jump into a diagnosis with both feet, you really need to understand what it is you're looking at and how it's supposed to work. I've always been a firm believer that if you understand how something is supposed to operate, it's much easier to determine why it's not operating that way. And with all the interrelationships of components and systems and the features that they enable, some pre-work in the electrical diagrams and understanding those systems is essential. So we've been doing a lot of work on our diagrams over the last several years to make them to where, for the electrical diagnostician, they can literally use these things now as their homepage almost to navigate through the vehicle. And so I thought what I might do is I've kind of put together a few screenshots of our product and really how these come from real technicians, real shops that we kind of helped out, just to show you how some of these features work and how they help people in the electrical diagnostic process today. Pete, one of my favorite stories is, we had a shop, I won't pick on them with names, but they called us up and they had I knew the guy, I've known him for a number of years, good diagnostician. These guys they know their stuff. But they had a 2015 Camry in the shop, and the problem with the Camry was it ran okay, but like the dash was dead. Like the gauges weren't operative, the radio wasn't operative. There were a number of things that weren't working. The check engine light was on, but when they connect their scan tool, they got like no data, which is, you know, today that's like the technician, you know, the white face, oh my God, what do I do now, right? Because we've all gotten to count on that scan tool as kind of our center point into the vehicle, rightly so. But, you know, when there is no data, so they called me and they said, you know, this is odd because the engine's running fine, the car is actually running okay, but I'm just wondering if the ECM might be bad. And I kind of agreed with them. I said, that doesn't sound right. You know, let's check some things. So we had them check pin 6 on the OBD2 connector, which is really a digital pulse reading. You know, it's on the CAN bus, but it should, you know, typically if you just read it with a multimeter, you'll read somewhere between like 4 and 6 volts or something as it averages out. And it was just like 0, like not even a, you know, nothing on it. And the guy even tried, I think he tried a digital oscilloscope and got no reading at all, no indication there was any life on that pin, which had really gotten him, I think, to believe that the ECM must be bad. And so I said, you know, kind of to your philosophy, I said, let's take a look in the wiring charts and see what could be bringing that down. So we, you know, in this case, we've got a vehicle, but we really don't have a symptom that's searchable or a system that we're even really concerned about. So we just went in through our quick reference links to the wiring diagrams, and, you know, kind of like we were talking about earlier, you know, the cars we used to work on, you could probably get the whole wiring diagram on 2 or 3 pages. And now here's the table of contents for these diagrams for this Toyota.
Right.
So what I wanted to look at were these computer data lines, because basically it was my best guess. And so we brought those up and viewed them. And over here on the left is the OBD connector. I can zoom in on that. And we start seeing where pin 6 is. It's over here, this CAN high line, blue, and I've clicked it to highlight it. And then, so what I'm noticing immediately, because what I'm looking for here, Pete, is that any component that shares a connection with this could theoretically take that to ground and be killing our signal from the ECM, right? And so I wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case before we condemn the ECM. And first thing I see is that this wire goes into this junction block where it goes to a bunch of other components. Now, I can click on each of these wires individually, or I can just click on the component and highlight everything that those CAN lines go to. And so I start kind of looking and documenting, here's the power steering ECU, here's the steering sensor, here's some other things. I'm going to scroll this line down. Oh, it goes to another junction block yet, so I'll click on that and highlight it. And I'm just kind of documenting, here's the ECM actually, and here's the AC amplifier. These are things that theoretically I'm going to start having this guy just unplug to see whether or not the signal comes back. We notice that this line traces off the page, so we're going to go see where it goes to. And as I'm kind of rattling this off, the guy's on the phone with me. It goes up, and one of these lines goes to the radio assembly, what they call navigation receiver or radio and display. And he says, wait a minute. He said, the radio actually isn't the factory radio, Ben. And I said, well, you know, we might as well start there then. That's something we know has been touched. We don't know exactly why it would cause this, but and sure enough, he pulled the radio head out and he says, you know what? Behind the radio there was a one of these aftermarket little channel brackets that was meant to just support the weight of the rear of the radio. You know, we've all seen them. And because that radio didn't really have a place to plug the CAN wire into, they just kind of wrapped the CAN wire around that bracket. And over time, it had just chafed. And it literally, that was what took that line to ground. He just, like, even as he unwrapped it, he said, hey, the gauges just came back. Everything's starting to work. And then we got scan readings. Everything started working. So literally, you know, just a little electrical tape and, and getting that thing away from that bracket solved his problem. But, you know, had he just, you know, dived in or, God forbid, replaced an ECM and found it wasn't the problem, you know, this notion of looking at the diagram, understanding all the different components that could impact it. You know, I've had a number of other shops that have called me where had a guy with it was a Buick that had one of the body modules was actually like around the rear bumper somewhere, and he lived in a state like I think it was Illinois actually, and salt had gotten into the connector on this module, and it had taken the whole day to bust down too. So this stuff happens, and by doing a little bit of upfront research, we probably spent, well, maybe 10 minutes on this and figured it out pretty quickly. You could really dive into a multi-hour event of trying to solve this, right?
Yeah, well, and I gotta say, Ben, it's like, as you've gone through the process that you use to help this shop, one of the things that that I noticed, and I want to share with everybody who's watching, excuse me, it's not unusual on most platforms to have the ability to highlight a wire. But what I thought was unique is a few things. First, when you were able to click on the junction block and then highlight all of the associated wires at one shot. And the other nice thing, because I think in some of these other cases you highlight one, but that's the only one you get. If you highlight, another one, then that one the first one kind of goes away.
Right.
And also what was, really nice is the fact that the highlight continues across the multiple pages. So you're not having to relocate that wire on the next diagram yourself. It's already done for
Right.
you.
That's what we wanted to do. These diagrams are getting so complex. By being able to give you quick focus on the circuit you're interested in, you're less likely to accidentally, jump a page and say, oh, well, I thought this was the wire, but actually it was one off the pin or something, and we just want to make it as easy as we can.
Awesome.
So, another kind of quick thing I'll show you, since we're talking about these wiring diagrams, one of the things that we're pretty excited about is, and again, recognizing that, you and I kind of lived in this age, and electrical was what we, at least I kind of almost specialized in electrical and drivability back in the day. But a lot of folks aren't. A lot of people are, just, let's face it, it's not a dig against anybody. A lot of us are very mechanical, tactile people. You show us an oil leak and we're happy. We can find that and fix it, or a water leak. But, a current leak is not so easy to see, right? You might feel it, but you're not going to see it. So what we did is, this was another, just an example. We had a shop, I don't remember exactly why they were doing it, but they were diagnosing an accelerator pedal sensor on a Impala. And, he actually called me to thank me for doing this for him. And he said, I was working on this car, so I entered in my accelerator pedal, sensor, got to my OneSearch Plus results, which is, that's kind of like, this represents all the types of information we know about this particular component on this vehicle. So some of this is OE, some of this is SureTrack experience-based, but he wants to go into the wiring chart, so he clicks on that. And you notice what happens is, for that component, we know that component that he searched for, and we've already highlighted it for him, so he doesn't have to drift his eyes around these components to find it. They're already highlighted, so all he's got to really do is hide the rest of the wires, and he's working. And he just loved that. He thought that was the coolest thing. And we actually do the same thing even if you enter in a diagnostic trouble code. If that trouble code is associated most likely to a specific component, we'll go ahead and highlight that component for you so you can get on with your diagnostics. And, and it's kind of, this was an easy one, because you notice here we're on diagram page 1 of 5, but had this component been on like page 3 of 5, we would have actually jumped you to that page, highlighted that component. And it's all in a effort to try to, save you from having to scan around in these diagrams to find the part you're looking for, right?
Makes life easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we just really introduced earlier this year, which we think really helps us out, and I'll just use another story here. Here we got a 2010 Dodge that won't start, tow-in, and as the tech was working on this, he plugged in his scan tool, got codes. He's got a code for a map sensor, and he had 3 cam sensor codes. And so he thought that was odd. You know, he tried to read the map and cam sensor with the scan tool while he was cranking the engine. It turned over, it just wouldn't start. Right. And he got no readings at all again. So he jumps in and he didn't know which one to pick, so he just picked map sensor, and he went into his wiring charts, and of course it pre-highlighted for him, just like I was talking about. And so he's zooming in and he, hide the rest of it, and he's noticing that on this circuit, you see that the map and the cam sensor both share this 5-volt reference supply.
Sure. Yeah.
So sure enough, he puts his he takes a reading on that, and he's got 0 volts. So the sensors aren't powering up, so the car's not going to start, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're interested. He unplugged both of them to see if one of them had shorted and still had 0 volts. So now he's wanting to look. This 5-volt reference runs off the left page here, because here it actually did. It took us to page 3 of 4 with that component. So it took him right where we wanted to be. And it turns out that it comes down to the 5-volt supply right at the ECM. So very quickly, he's now suspecting the ECM may have a problem, because he wants to unplug the ECM and check to see if the wire is actually shorted to ground somewhere, or if the ECM itself has a problem. And here's kind of where it's cool, Pete, is you might have noticed that now most of the components on these wiring diagrams have this blue text, which indicates in our language that they're linkable or clickable. So now, now that he's interested in the ECM, remember we started this OneSearch Plus experience with a map sensor. Now we're interested in the ECM. He doesn't even know where it is on this car, so he wants to learn more about it. Now he could shut down the wiring diagram, go back into our ProDemand, type in ECM and search for it. But here now we can just click on that link, and we'll bring up most of the cards that would have been associated had he gone into OneSearch Plus and done that. So now he can quickly look at anything he wants to about that ECM, tech bulletins, real fixes, etc. He wants to know the location, so he clicks there, and just as if he had entered it, now it shows him where it's at, and he can click the exit here to get back to this, and he can either click the X here, or he can click in the diagram to get returned to the diagram. Right. Or he can click new search if he really wants to just say, look, now I want to quote the ECM, or launch it as my new search criteria, and then it'll start a OneSearch Plus for him. So it's all designed around. I mean, you can, and had out of that ECM, he went to another component. He could click around and literally not have to come back to this page until he's really ready to maybe go into the estimator and estimate the job, right?
That's a big help. I remember when I was in the shop full time, that if you wanted to move to a different layer, if you will, you really had to back all the way out and then go back in again. I like the fact that you can leave that page you were on active until you're done with it, and that's a big plus for sure.
Yeah. We kind of use the analogy of, the way you and I'm putting words in your mouth here, but the way I imagine that you worked, I know I did, is that even when we had electronic systems, a lot of times when it came to the wiring chart, we'd find the chart we wanted and print it out, because we knew we were going to have to do that. So we'd print the chart, so we always had it in our eyesight, and then we'd go navigate for whatever else we wanted to know about the system. Right. And this kind of allows us to do that without printing, right?
Right. Well, I appreciate you sharing these real world examples and some of the new features that ProDemand has. I was already familiar with some of them because, I have a project coming up for September, my wife's Scion, that we've kind of talked a little bit about, and how we'll show how this is going to work. And guys, gals who are watching today, I invite you to make sure you check that one out, because we're actually going to go through the entire process Now, I've done a number of videos on different testing techniques and reading schematics by themselves and, pieces of the puzzle, if you will. But this fault with my missus's car provides an excellent opportunity for me to really share how you tackle that kind of a problem from start to finish. So I hope you'll enjoy me with that. And of course, we're going to have the help of Ben and ProDemand to make that repair happen. Now, one last thing, Ben, before we cut you loose, if anyone who's watching, whether they be a ProDemand subscriber or not, needs help, more information, would like to know, maybe get a few pointers on using or maximizing the use of ProDemand, where and who do they contact?
Well, a really good resource is actually on our homepage, actually at mitchell1.com, Pete. We've actually got training tutorials about various aspects of the ProDemand product, the OneSearch Plus, the interactive wiring diagrams and all that. And of course, you can always call us, or and we're happy to put you in touch with somebody that can help you. We're, it's kind of interesting through this COVID situation we're in. God help us all, and hope everybody stays safe out there. But we have been able to keep fully staffed on our support lines and assistant lines, and we'll take care of any questions or inquiries you've got, and happy to do it. And stay safe.
I appreciate it, Ben. So, all right, so you heard him. I'm going to put the link to the website, and it's either be in the post or the video description, depending on where you see this video. And I encourage you to reach out and check them out. Again, that's Mitchell One ProDemand. Again, Ben, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it, Pete. You guys take care.